We're going to start. So I'm delighted to welcome everyone, obviously, to this Kushame session. Just to repeat for the one who don't know, Kushame is actually a word from the local language in Gibraltar and in the region of Gibraltar, which means listen to me. So it's a dialect, and we're very happy that this word might enter in the dictionary of the dialect locally. It means a lot locally. But we are here to welcome the singer and songwriter Noam Vazana. So Noam, welcome, and let's begin. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself as a start? Where are you from, for example?
I was born in Israel, and now I'm living in Amsterdam. I moved here for school. I studied here in the conservatorium, and I stayed because I love the city. And I'm a singer-songwriter. I play trombone and piano, and my current project since 3 years is reviving the Ladino language around the world. And it's the tradition that I've learned from my grandmother. She's a Sephardic Jew, and she had origins both in Morocco and in Portugal. And when I was visiting in Morocco, I was playing in a jazz festival there. I heard a song on the street that gave me a sort of a flashback moment for the times that she used to sing to me when I was a child, and it encouraged me to do a Ladino project alongside my own composed jazz songs. So I released an album of traditional Ladino songs, and now I'm working on a new album of original Ladino songs that was supposed to be released this month actually, but because of the corona, it will get postponed. But yeah, we're working on the mix right now.
So you compose as well in Ladino, or you?
Yes.
You compose in Ladino today, which is very rare. Would you like to tell everyone what is Ladino exactly?
It's a language that was originated in the Iberian Peninsula, and the language of the Sephardic Jews, Spanish Jews, and Portuguese Jews. And the origins of the language is from Latin. And it's it never had an alphabet, so it's not a written language. It was transcribed into Hebrew as if you would say Latin words and write them with the Hebrew alphabet. So that's an interesting correlation. It's the same relationship that Yiddish has with German, for instance. So you could say that Ladino is the Spanish Yiddish. In a way.
Spanish Yiddish, Ladino.
Yeah.
Yes, you mentioned that your mom had an origin in Portugal and Morocco, and I think there they were speaking another type of Ladino. I'm sure you're aware, called the Jaquetia, no? Was she speaking this language already, or it's too old, really?
My grandmother. Well, actually, she spoke Ladino, but my father forbade her to speak with us in Ladino because, he was one of the kids that were sent to Kol Israel Chaverim schools in Morocco. And, these schools were under a pogrom. They were under attack. So he was spotted as a gifted writer at that time. He was writing for a children's magazine, and he was rehomed in a kibbutz in Israel. So he looked at that event and his life as a sort of a redemption. So he dedicated his life to Hebrew afterwards. So he didn't want to speak the languages that he spoke at home anymore. So he only allowed us to speak Hebrew. So no Arabic, no Ladino. So the only connection I had to the Ladino language was through my grandmother, but then through songs. So she sang songs for me when I was a kid. Yeah.
As you said, you're not just singing Sephardic songs. You have a quite large repertoire. Do you have any limits?
I hope not. I get bored quickly. So I think to keep myself interested, I do a lot of research, and I try to think outside of my own comfort zone, because otherwise I become stagnant. I don't feel like I'm creating anymore, or like I'm alive anymore. So I want to challenge myself and do new things all the time.
You have a name called Nani before Noam Vazana. Is it an artist name? Is it a part of your name? Is it a nickname from the family, maybe?
Yeah, my grandmother gave me that nickname when I was a kid, and because the project is a sort of homage for her culture, I decided to release the album under the name Nani instead of Noam Vazana, because that's the name she called me when I was a child.
So today we call you Nani Noam Vazana, Nani or Noam?
You can call me whatever you want.
Okay, I can call you.
Both is good.
I think you accepted to make us a big favor and sing at least one song. For me, at least, before we welcome Ruth Fisher for the second part of the interview, you promised to sing something in Ladino precisely. What is your choice? And could you say a few words about the song you are going to perform?
Yeah, it's called Cuando el Rey Nimrod. It means in the days of King Nimrod. And it's a funny song because the story is about Abraham, but it depicts Abraham as if he was born in the Jewish quarter. And as we know from the Bible, Abraham was supposed to be the first Jew, so he couldn't have been born in the Jewish quarter, and definitely not in Spain either. So it's a whole Spanish king in the Jewish quarter theme. And the story in the song is very similar to the story of Jesus. So the way that the light hits the house and the three wise men are following and finding the baby is as if the Jesus and Abraham stories are mixed together. And the song has both origins in 18th century Morocco, in Tangier, so part of the lyrics and melody was written there. And there's also a part that was written during the Ottoman Empire regime. So yeah, it's a mix and match of a couple of stories and a couple of melodies together.
So I think you can start, huh? Cuando el Rey Nimrod.
Yes. Cuando el rey Nimrod al campo de salía, miraba en cielo en la estrella, vino una luz santa en la judería, que había de nacer Abraham Avinu. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Luego a las comadres se encomendaba que toda mujer que preñada quedara, si no pariera, junto la matara, que había de nacer Abraham Avinu. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Ay, Cuando el rey Nimrod al campo de salía, miraba en cielo en la estrella, vino una luz santa en la judería, que había de nacer Abraham Avinu. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre
Thank you very much, Noam. Nani Noam Vazana for her Kushame session. And before I hand over to Ruth Fisher for the second part of the interview, the format is quite short, actually. It's only 30 minutes. So, and it will be followed by question and answers. So do you have any idea of where this song comes from? If it's really an original Sephardic song or it has been composed after 1492?
I think it has been composed after 1492, but then it's based on a traditional melody that was available in the Middle Ages in the Iberian Peninsula. And then, as you know, the Sephardic Jews were expelled from Spain, so they brought their language and their culture with them to many parts of the world. So this specific melody is influenced both by Turkish melodies and by Moroccan melodies, so North African melodies. So this is a very specific type of Ladino music. For instance, other songs like Puncha Puncha is very classical. You could even sense something like a Monteverdi-like influence in that kind of pre-Renaissance music. So Ladino songs are quite varied in style, I think, to correlate with the cultures that took
so now
away.
I think thanks to your eclecticism, you're so eclectic as an artist that we're going to try now to explore the other parts, if you don't mind. And I'm going to ask Ruth, who's kind enough to spend the time with us. And I know how she's busy, and I thank her so much for joining us. She will probably ask you other questions about what's going on currently and the other side of Noam Vazana. Please, Ruth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jan. So I wanted to ask about the sort of the technical side of things, in that even before this pandemic that we've all had to go through and adjust to, musicians have recently had to adjust their way of managing themselves. The way that we can access music nowadays, look at us using Zoom, there's digital downloads, Spotify, all that sort of thing. So some musicians have found it very enlightening to be able to choose their own destiny by not having to follow the big record labels, the demands that they have. They've been able to release their own albums. Other musicians I know have found that it interferes with being able to focus solely on their own creativity and creating music or art or picture or whatever. What are your thoughts on this? Because I know that you're actually a very busy musician and that you seem to do a lot of creating, but you also do seem to manage yourself as well. So how have you found this and putting it all together?
To be honest, it has been challenging to put things together, because I'm really used to being on tour. And I have been focusing on my touring career more than anything else in the last 12 years. So I have been focused on getting gigs, promoting them, producing the tours by myself, building up the band, writing the arrangements, and then eventually being the tour manager myself. So because I'm doing my management myself. And I'm not signed to a label. I have been signed to a label with my first album, and I found that at least that specific label didn't work out for me. Of course, I'm not saying that I won't sign with a label in the future, but that specific label did not work out for me, and I wanted a different artistic direction than what they were pushing for. They were going for a very poppy production and single oriented, so we were not to release an album but release a lot of singles. And you can call me old-fashioned, but I really like the album format, and I love creating to a theme or let's call it a focus. So my albums are all concept albums. Each album tells a story, and I wanted that for myself. And I think the fans voted with their feet, as you say in Hebrew, because the first album was released and was critically acclaimed and was played a lot on the radio. One song, Personality, was even chosen for the best new song in the Netherlands. in 2012, but the audience didn't come to the venues. And
Right.
when I broke free from that contract and I produced my own albums, so my second release, Love Migration, was not a big seller on the radio, but the shows were sold out.
Right.
And from then on, the audience has kept voting with their feet, and I'm very lucky to be in a position as an independent musician that has a following, a fan base that is loyal and is going with me places. It's not to be taken for granted. However, I haven't been investing in promoting myself online much. So I take this crisis as an opportunity to focus on my online presence. And I also started a subscribers program. So people can sign up and receive specific content that is subscriber exclusive. So I would send, since 2 months ago, I started sending specific newsletter only for subscribers. So I don't mean people who subscribe to the newsletter, but people who subscribe to my music. It's like a subscribers program. And then they could get live concerts. We have a secret group on Facebook where I broadcast weekly live concerts online. And we have a party on an island here in the Netherlands, and we get together. We have, of course, when the concerts will be back, we'll have concert tickets and backstage passes, and all the music gets downloaded or sent by post. CDs are sent by post, badges. So there's a lot of perks.
Was this something that you have done just literally in the last 2 or 3 months that we've been going through this pandemic?
The last 2 months, yeah.
Was this something that you'd been thinking about, or this forced you into the situation, or it was literally, wow, what am I going to do now? Think.
Well, yeah, it was definitely related to the pandemic because I wanted to continue performing, and I was trying to find a platform where I could continue to perform, and not only on Facebook or on YouTube Live, because that's different. You know, if you have a group that follows you and they know your songs, that could make requests and things like that, and you could surprise them with new things. And let's say when somebody joins, I also send personal thank you videos and things like that. So you cannot do that with a group that is unlimited. You need to limit your group in a way to be able to fit into your resources. So yeah, that's definitely pandemic related group, and I think it's going great.
And how do you get the atmosphere? You know, that there is something wonderful about probably being on a stage looking at all these people, and the audience feeds off of you and you feed off the audience. With this now doing it through the computer, how do you manage to get that atmosphere for you?
I don't. It is irreplaceable. The rush that you get on stage, and I don't mean like a drug thing. I mean more like this connection that you have with the audience, because it's not only a rhetoric speech. You get a lot back from the audience. You're actually the vessel, you know, communicating something. And then especially after the show, because I do a lot of meet and greets, even almost after every show, unless I have to fly somewhere afterwards. So then people come and talk to me and they tell me their stories, and sometimes I even have ideas for songs because people are telling me their stories. And sometimes I mean, you think composing is a very lonely profession. You know, you sit in your room and you're thinking that you're, you know, in your own world, you're creating this intricate soundscape, and you're alone, you're isolated. And touring is when it's becoming alive, and you get something back, and you get perspective on life, I think, when you are on the road. And yeah, this feedback is essential as an artist, because otherwise you'd be just putting your songs in the drawer. You don't have to share them with anyone if you don't have the audience sharing that with you.
True, very, very true. We know that your latest project is to do with Ladino, but also you're definitely a jazz singer. And tell me how you got into jazz. I know that there's a great scene in Israel with the jazz, and they have their very own unique jazz sound. How did you get into it?
Well, when I was 9 years old, there was this presentation in our school. The local orchestra came in, and it was like an explained concert. You know, they would talk about the different instruments and demonstrate them. And I really fell in love with the trombone. And I came back home and I told my dad I wanted to play a huge trumpet, and he was like, "No way." It took me a while to convince them, and they actually said no. So I was very young, so I started my own little business back then. It was really funny. I was offering children's nurseries to put up a puppet show for their students together with a friend of mine, and we got paid doing that. And from the money I earned from that little venture, I paid for my trombone lessons. And in the school, in the music school, there was a big band, and I went listening once to one of their rehearsals, and I thought, like, yeah, I want to do Dixieland. This is so cool. And yeah, I guess that's where it started out. And then, of course, I started listening to Ella and Louis, you know, and the whole gang fell in love with Bill Evans, and yada, yada, yada. Here we are.
And how do you find the difference between the Israeli jazz scene and now that you're in the Netherlands?
It's very different and very similar. The sound is very different, and the approach is very different to playing music. But the fact that the scene is so small, and that people treat each other in a certain certain competition is very similar to what is going on in Israel. And also because the scene is so small, there aren't a lot of places to play. So you would have to really cram yourself to get gigs. And, you know, you still have places like the Alto that let you play 5 sets a night and pay you 60 euros to do it. So, and you think, like, where do you get forward in a niche like that? You don't. And if you go to a jam session, you already know how everybody's going to play Stella by Starlight. So, and that happens in both countries. You know, it's not very different in that sense. So I used to go to a lot of jam sessions when I arrived the first year, but at a certain point I decided not to go anymore because it felt like it was just not what I was looking for. So I started out, well, I'm good with starting on things, I guess. I don't know if you know the pianist Thijs Koppen.
No.
He's a Dutch pianist. So we were in school together, and we started a jam session at school. So every week we would reserve a room for an hour and a half, and we will invite a few musicians that we liked that played at school, and we would just have a free session with everybody. And funnily enough, all the recordings from these sessions all got busted. I don't have any recording from these sessions, but they were amazing. One of the most amazing experiences in jam sessions I ever had in my life. So yeah, I guess you make your own.
Are you still playing the trombone? Because that is one of my most favorite instruments. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me show you.
That could be a first, a Zoom concert
Happy
with
and
trombone.
ready.
Look at that. Fantastic.
There you go.
Love it. So, yeah, I mean, you mentioned that, you know, we're going through this pandemic, and I mean, we don't know when live gigs are going to take place. You mentioned earlier that when we were off air, that you're supposed to be going to Berlin, I think it is, to do a concert. How do you see that happening?
South of Germany. Well, they are very keen on making the concert happen. They have booked it more than a year in advance, and it's an outdoor festival. So they said that they will do anything they can to, well, they do have to regulate it, of course. There will be less people in the audience. And we will have to drive because we're not allowed to fly. And we still have to hear, I think the 14th of June will be the new decisions published as far as crossing the border, you know, the new driving regulations. So I hope we are able to drive. The biggest challenge would be how to get everybody there at the same time, because it's a very long drive and we cannot go in separate cars because you have to share the driving. You really have to have people sharing with you unless you're going to drive for 2 days only on your own. So I hope that they will approve regulations wise that we are allowed to be 2 or 3 people in the car and then we can just share.
Gosh, it's a whole new way of the whole new way of living and performing now. It's quite challenging.
I got a proposal yesterday to play sometime in September in the Netherlands, and they said that they wanted to do, because they already sold, I don't know, 600 tickets or something like that for the gig, and they instead, because of the regulations, you cannot have more than 100 people in a room at the same time. So they want to do 2 days with 3 gigs a day. So then every time put in 100 people, and the musicians still get paid the same amount. So you have to work 6 times hard.
That's just wrong.
And so like I don't know what to answer to that proposal. Well, I did say immediately, like, well, if I could do it solo, or maybe a duo, but a quartet for that amount of money, 6 concerts, I mean, it's impossible.
Yeah, I think these are going to be some very new, even more new challenges that musicians are going to have to face coming up. I think we're going to go to Q&A very, very shortly. But before then, we're going to have another song from you. And this time, I think it's one of your own compositions called Bird. Yes. Tell us a little bit about it.
I wrote a song in Poland. I was there in a residency, and I was writing new songs. And it was a summer day, and it was very interesting because it felt like we had 4 seasons within one day. So there was, in the morning it was sunny, and then later on in the afternoon it was rainy, and then it started hailing, and then eventually the sun came out, and then a flock of geese flew by the window, and I felt like I was experiencing all the seasons, and I wanted to write a song about the cycle of life, and I called it Birds. That's the one, and it basically means that we have to believe in spring, and I hope a change is going to come also in the times of this pandemic. I think it's very fitting to play it now. Piece to piece, flakes are coming down and linger on my nose a bit. Stale and sound covering the ground as winter's gonna call us in. Birds will fly away, elated by the wind. Smell the sky, what my eyes have seen, 'cause spring is coming back to me. Melting drops shimmer in your eyes and gliding on your cheeks. I see empty words, don't make a sound, 'cause I already know you're free. Birds will fly away, elated by the wind, and spelling the sky what my eyes have seen, 'cause spring is coming back to me. I'm calling, I'm calling, I'm calling, I'm calling, yeah. Take my hand, It might be cold to touch, but I am warm inside. Soon the frost will put a spell on us, but only for a month or two. Birds will fly away, inundated by the rain, and spell in the sky what my eyes have seen. 'Cause spring is coming back to me. 'Cause spring is coming back to me.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we go to the questions and answers, perhaps you'd like to tell people where they can get your music and how we can subscribe to your, so we can listen to your gigs and stuff. So, and then we'll go to the questions and answers.
Thanks so much for reminding me about that. So you can get my music on my website. My Ladino music is not on Spotify or on iTunes because because of the high fees that they charge for independent artists. So I have a web shop on my website. So that's nanimusic.com. So it's easy to remember, NANI music.com. And then /store, and then you can find all the albums. There are 3 albums, and they are available for download as well as to be sent by post. Yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah. And there's a subscribers program. So yeah, that's on another website though, noam-vazana.com/subscribe. I can put them in the chat later on.
I think she has this gift of ubiquity, you know, she's everywhere and different website and different labels. We can, Jose Luis, who's behind this directing of this Kushame session, can you unmute everyone if there is any question? I have one actually, if you don't mind. I see we spoke about it earlier. You interviewing as well professionals of the industry, and you make sessions of nearly 2 hours. You mentioned, correct, with them.
Yes.
My question to you is: during this pandemic time, have you got from them 1 or 2 tips about the real situation or the future? Did you learn something very, very original or different that we could you could share with us today?
There's a lot of amazing things that I've learned from conversations with musicians, with actually it's key people from the music industry. It's on ydiymusic.com if you wanted to check that out. So today I interviewed Balázs Weyer from Hangvito in Hungary. So that's the company who will host WOMEX this year in Budapest. Hopefully it will happen because of the pandemic. And he said a lot of interesting things. He said, actually, one of the nicest things he said that I totally support, he said that he will never book an artist that uses autotune. And I really liked that because for me, music is the art of performing live because it happens within a time frame. Unlike other types of art, for instance, painting or sculpting, you see the product when it's finished. Well, when you're listening to an album, it's just a moment that was captured in time. And this moment will not be able to be repeated. You will not be able to repeat it live. So every performance is unique and it's different. As if it's the, the replicas of the 86 paintings of Van Gogh's Sunflowers. So every time you perform a song, it is different. And by capturing the live essence of the spirit of the song or whatever it is, this is why I think live performances will go on after the pandemic, because people will continue to have the desire to experience the live setting, and I have the desire to connect with my audience, and I'm sure they have the desire to connect with me. So I think this essential factor of what we call performing arts is going to survive this crisis.
Okay. Jose Luis, if you can unmute, we have a question from ORPHY Robinson. If you can unmute him, please.
Okay, so hi. What are the positives? What are the positives, if any, about operating as a musician online in this period that you've noticed?
Connecting with new people for me would be the best, the biggest advantage of this pandemic, because people who cannot see me on tour, you know, they never had the opportunity to see a concert, and then all of a sudden I have fans from Rio de Janeiro and from Dubai, you know, countries that I never traveled to, tuning in and writing emails, thank you emails, thanking me for the ability to connect to the music. And you could see also that the people who sign up for the subscriptions are usually people who live far away, so they're not European, and they need this extra step from us, the artists, to come closer to them. So I'm happy that I have the chance to connect with them now.
That's great. Can I answer that? Well, one thing was the trombone looked like a bass trombone, but I could be wrong. It just looks really big as you walk across the screen. Is it a bass trombone?
No, it's a tenor.
It's the tenor. Ah,
He
okay.
doesn't even have an F attachment.
Oh, okay. Wow.
There it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you see it?
Yeah. It just looked huge as it came across the screen.
Yeah, comparing to me, it's not that big.
Right. And the other thing you were talking about, you did some free stuff. You were talking about jam sessions, and how disappointed they can be. And in the UK, I run a jam session where songs are banned, standards are banned, the real book is banned. We create the surreal book, and we bring musicians from all different sort of categories together. So classical, jazz, improv, whatever. We've found that by taking away those barriers and having it open, one, we've taken away the macho angle of men showing off playing, a million miles per hour on a saxophone, because it's not required. They have to use their ears instead of their, whatever. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is the freedom. When you've been used to a lot of restrictions in, say, the classical world, or, all the different other sort of genres, did you find that freedom opened you up more to experimenting with music?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I love free jazz, and also I love the fact that it doesn't limit me to a certain style. Because if I would go to a jam session and join in and I don't know, playing just the way you are, so there is a certain way that people play just the way you are. So that it's going to be. So it starts with a double A, and then people. Each person takes a solo, and then there's a unison of the horns at the end, and then you think like, okay, how many times can I play that in that way? And if you take the breakdown, the melody, break down the harmony, reharmonize it in real time, it makes you a more creative musician instead of a parrot imitating what people have done before you. And I have a lot of respect to the masters, and you should be a parrot at the beginning. You should transcribe, and you should do a lot of things, because it's going to better your performance. But at the end, when you're on stage, forget about it. Just be yourself, do something new.
Kind of like the Herbie Hancock, learn everything and then forget it and just play.
I love him. I just downloaded his masterclass.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any other question? No. So if not, first of all, I would like to thank you all for participating to the Kushame session of Nani Noam Vazana. You, Ruth, for helping me conducting this interview with a nice Jazz FM mic. Wow, I just noticed the brand on it. Why not? That makes it like even more serious. Fantastic. I would love to abuse and ask her to sing more, but frankly, to be fair, yes, but to be fair, I would really recommend you go to her website, her channel, her Facebook page. There's a lot of material there, and I'm sure you will enjoy it. You agree with that, Noam, or you really want to sing something?
Whatever you prefer. I'm yours. I'm here.
I see hands doing. Normally we have finished the
Alright.
session, but it's up to you. You decide.
Do you want me to do another song?
If you want, with pleasure.
Which one? All right. I have an idea. I have a song. It's in Ladino. It's a song that I wrote myself, both the lyrics and the music. And you can sing along at home, but it's not difficult because it has no lyrics. So it's basically do do. Yeah. Do 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 do. I don't see you singing.
Oh boy.
We are all on mute.
Sing along, come on.
Unmute everyone.
Like Maria, you know? Until everybody sings, I'm not going off stage. All right. Caminos del Chile, déjanos en los casas. Espero que vengas a mí, nadie me debe nada. La mañana se ve el buen día, yo caminaré el curso. Daré sonor de manjares, dolor, razón, la próxima vida. Vamos a hacer una segunda piel, la culpa es asunto de ayer. Con los años vienen de piel, cosas que van y vienen. De la Torah eterne, tú vas a enseñar donde las charlas tomar. Estoy de pie en el lugar. Vamos a hacer un danza con la piel, la culpa es asunto de ayer. Con los años vienen de ayer, cosas que van y vienen. Vamos a hacer una segunda piel, la culpa de esos asuntos de ayer. Con los años vienen de ayer, cosas que van y vienen.
Bravo. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, good things have an end as well. So let's meet you on your social media and website. Thank you so much for taking the time for this Kushame session. Thank you, Ruth, for the questions and the time. I'm very flattered. I can see that there's Daphna Levy somewhere in the audience who's a jazz singer as well. So apparently this is the first very, very jazz Kushame session. And I invite you next week, same time, same day, to talk probably even more jazz, Ruth, with Barak Weiss, who's quite important in this field. Thank you so much. See you soon. We love you.
Thank you, Ruth and Jan, for the interview.
Shalom, shalom.
Thank you, Noam.